The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me and can everyone see my screen? Good morning, Charles. How are you this morning? Okay, before we get started this morning, I would like everyone to take a moment to read over the risk disclaimer. That is for my protection as well as yours. And basically, you cannot or should not trade with money you cannot afford to lose. Okay, that is regardless of whether you're trading futures, forex, or binary options, or even spreads. There is always risk involved. Okay, so I want to make sure everyone knows that. Now, in the trading room this morning, I am recording it, so if you want to go through it later, you can. But I also want to actually go through what I call the flow chart for trades. Okay. And the first one that we have four processes basically. And I'm not going to go through each one. I'm just going to highlight them. You have the before trading. You have your trade setup. You have a warning process, especially if you are trading futures or forex directly. And then you also have trade management, which again would apply to trading either the futures or the forex. I don't necessarily use that for trading binary options. Okay. So basically you have four trading processes. And of course, the first process is your before trading process. Okay. Now, this one to me is very important because it requires you to be honest with yourself, okay? And the first question, am I okay to trade today? Notice that it's no maybe here. There's either a yes or a no. That is designed for a purpose, okay? Maybes do not count in trading. Only the yes and the no's. Those are the decision-making processes. Now, today, if I had to answer this question, I would probably say no, because I have a really bad headache and that could affect my trading. Okay. Now, if you marked yes, we always mark the lines on the chart for a market report. The reason that we do that is when you get caught up in the market action and you're watching your charts, you don't always remember that there's a market report at 10 o'clock in the morning. So by marking these market reports on your chart, it's just a reminder there's something going on at that particular time. And then we would add lines to represent the congestion dots previously. But now with the new ATR, we don't need to do that process. We can actually see it on the chart. The next question is kind of identifying which trade setup you're going to be trading, whether it's going to be counter trend or trending. Okay. If you have a magenta peak on a higher time frame, okay, then that tells me I'm going to be counter trend trading. Okay, counter trend is a Buddha process. It starts with an ATR, but it is a different trade setup. Now, if there are no potential magenta peaks on the 45-minute or higher, then we do this process, which is a trend trading process. Does everybody understand that? Any questions on that? I mean, basically, we have two trade setups. One is trend, one is counter trend. Now, instead of going through the actual Buddha process and the Duke process, I'm going to switch over to the new Tradeflow, which is really designed for people that are new to THD because it just makes it a lot easier to go through this process because it's easier to follow. The first question, is price at an ATR? Okay. Now, this should be relatively easy to answer. And the reason that it should be is because in the market analyzer or in the scanner, it will always come up and tell you that price is at an ATR. Okay. So there's no doubt about it. You have it right here. Price is at an ATR. Either yes or no. Okay. So let's go and see if we have anything at an ATR in the market analyzer. Okay, the first one I see, price at the ATR, is on the Dow. Do y'all see that? So now I can actually say, yes, I have price at an ATR. Okay, so this one is checked. Do I have trade alignment? Okay. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you have any doubts, you read this little box right here. Using the ATR support and resistance is both white and blue ATRs either above or below price with room for profits. Okay, well, again, let's go and check. Now, this one is on a 3-minute market analyzer. Do y'all see that? Okay, if it's at a 3-minute chart, then I'm going to bring up my 3-minute chart. And do you have both white and blue ATR either above or below? Well, they're both above. Okay. Do you have Stochastics Confirmation? Okay. That means either you have hidden divergence or a trend divergence. Okay. In this case, the stochastics is just actually confirming what you were seeing on the chart. Do you understand that? Now, why do I say that? Because you are making higher lows and you're making higher lows in the stochastics. Does everybody see that? So in this case, I would answer yes. Okay. Now, is there room for profits is somewhat subjective depending on whether you're trading binaries or spreads or the actual futures contract. In this case, I would anticipate that it would come back and test this high. It is currently at 490. There's 30 ticks there of potential profit. Do y'all see that? Now, if you were trading the binaries, your answer would be no. Okay? But we're trading the futures, so I'm just going to do one contract. It makes it easier to follow. So I'm going to buy one contract at market. Now, why would there not be enough room for profits on a binary? Anybody want to venture a guess? The strike width on a binary on the Dow Jones is 12 points, okay? I use out of the money binaries, okay? So it's got to move 12 points to get above my strike, but I know in order to take a profit, it needs to move 2 strikes in my favor. That's 36 points. There's only 30 points before it hits the high. Do y'all follow that now? Now, if I was to put in a stop, I would probably put it at 480, okay? That's roughly about 10 ticks, of risk, okay? But remember, I've got the potential to make 30 ticks. Does everyone understand this? You are very quiet, so either I'm doing an excellent job of explaining this morning or you're just being shy. And being shy does not increase your knowledge. Now, what would I like to see this bar do? I would like to see this bar close above the high of the previous bar, okay? That would be on my dream list. I do not like the way it's forming right now. And I'm just going to go in at 24.80 and I'm going to do a sell stop. So if I'm talking, then I have a stop limit in there. And notice that I can now see both of my market analyzers. We have the ES price is at an ATR, okay? Now you could go and look at that one, but I'm already in a trade, okay? So I'm going to stick with this one in case I need to move it or take profits or whatever. But again, it's just telling you that you have another potential trade setup. Now, while we're waiting on this, are there any questions? And I'm just going to mark on here where I anticipate it to go. It doesn't mean that it will. It's just my anticipation. Now, this bar did close above the high of this bar as I anticipated. I don't do at the monies. If you wanted to, yes, you could, Michael. But the reason that I don't do at the money is, you still need it to move in your direction, okay? And you're risking $55 versus $30. And I mean, if you look at this, I'm risking basically 10 points on a futures trade, okay? On a futures trade, that's $50, okay? But I've got the potential on this to make, let's say, 30 times 5, 150. You can't do that with the at the money, which is why I use out of the money. The stochastics confirmation, and again, it could be hidden divergence, which is higher lows in price with lower lows in the stochastics, or you have lower highs in price with higher highs in the stochastics. In other words, the stochastics is going opposite of price, okay? Now, the other one is trend divergence. That means that you're making higher highs in price, but lower highs in the stochastics. Or you're making lower lows and lower highs, with higher lows in the stochastics. But the other one is that they're going in the same direction. That's not a divergence, okay? That's just the stochastics is moving with price. You know, if you wanted to see a hidden divergence, you actually had one prior to the market opening. Do you see that? You made a higher low, a lower low in the stochastics. That's hidden divergence, okay? But then as this price made higher highs, you made trend divergence. Do you see that, Richard? And this is a great example of, you know, I trade binaries, I trade spreads, I trade futures. The only thing I won't trade anymore is the spot forex. And that's just because they have limited the forex brokers to the point of I'm just not trading them. You know, they're increasing the pip spreads and it's getting very expensive to trade forex. I'd rather trade them on the binary side. They don't do that with the futures though. I would really prefer that this current bar close up. It really did not do much of anything. And in this case, I don't like the way that that bar formed. So I'm actually going to raise my stop because I'm in the futures. Okay. And I'm going to set it at 85. So now I've got 5 ticks of risk. And why did I choose 85? Well, there was an isolated low right here. Okay. So I'm just a few ticks under that isolated low. I have the regular trend indicator, Richard, which is the blue and the red. The white would be the 12-minute. The next color of blue would be the 45-minute. The red would be the 180. And I'm going to expand it out so you can see it a little bit better. So if I shrink this down, I can't leave it like this, but do you see how you've got the 3-minute trend in your favor, the white's in your favor, the blue's in your favor, and so is the red. Then I've got to stretch it back out so that I can see it. Now, at this point, I'm going to take all risk off of the table. That means I'm going to be at break even. Does everybody understand that? That means I cannot lose money on this trade. The Drudge Report, Charles, is that this morning? Again, what would I like to see? I would love to see this price bar close at the top. I've already moved my stop up to break even. So I'm just kind of sitting on my hands. Either it moves in my direction or I come out at break even. In the meantime, we have the USD JPY. Do you see how the white and the blue just aligned? What has to happen? It has to retrace back to the ATR. So this is like on my watch list. So I'm going to watch it. If it comes back to the ATR and I have trade alignment, which I already have, and the Stochastics confirms it, well, then I have an entry on the USD JPY. And just FYI, I love to see this alignment right after you've had this period here where it was white above price and then it switched to below, and this has switched to below. Okay, but do I just jump in? No, I do not. You still have your setup criteria, you still have your rules, and that's what we're trading. Okay, I'm going to move my stop up just a little bit more where I'm sitting underneath this low. And I'm out of the Dow. And price did not do what we anticipated. I'd rather be out than in. Does everybody understand that one? Any questions on that one? Okay, now we have two where price is at the ATR. The ES, pull that off for a moment. Okay, do you see how the ES, you have white and then you have blue down here? That is not trade alignment. I don't want that trade. Then you have the NASDAQ. Okay, again, you see the same thing. White above, blue below. I don't want that trade. So then you're back to waiting. In this case, I'm going to bring the USD JPY over and we'll just wait for it because there's no other trade alignment right now. If you notice on the NASDAQ, you just flip this to red, okay? So in this case, you have the red and the white in your favor, but it will need to come back and test the red ATR because that's how it works. If you wanted to trade the 12-minute, okay? Do you see how you have the red and the white right now in your favor? Again, you would want it to retrace back to the ATR. You do not take an entry unless you are at an ATR. So I'm going to go take a break while we wait for something to align this morning. I'm back and we haven't had a retracement on the USD JPY and we're still waiting on these. So and just while we're waiting, the 12-minute, this bright red is the 12-minute ATR. The white is the 45. The blue is the 180. And the red is the 720. That is correct, Richard. And you see it earlier this morning over here on the NASDAQ right before the market opening. Do you see how you were making lower highs? Stochastics is making higher highs. You had the red and the white in your favor, okay? This was your entry bar right there. That's your reversal bar. That's the one that's saying, okay, the market's going to go down. Over on the 12-minute, I believe it was right in here, you had an entry where you were making lower highs, but look at the stochastics. That's your hidden divergence to the downside. And if you miss that, don't rush into another trade. You have to let these play out. You have to be at an ATR. You have to have the alignments. Okay. Let's say that it pulls back to the blue ATR, Richard. Okay. The white ATR on the 12-minute is the 45. The blue is the 180. Okay. The red is the 720. Okay. So in this case, if you pull back to this ATR, okay, you want to be in alignment with this ATR. Do you understand that, Richard? And this is the entire purpose of this is to put what we see on the 45 and the 180 and the 720 or even the 12-minute onto one chart to keep us focused, okay? This is the easiest way that I know of for traders to come into THD and actually be able to identify the moves. It's phenomenal, Richard. Compared to the way that we used to do it, which, you know, a lot of it I still do. This just simplified it. And I'm going to just move this off for a moment so I can show you, Richard. All right, so this is my 3-minute. This is my 12-minute. Do you see how I've got this in the center of my screen, Richard? Okay. Now, I'm pretty good with the indicators, okay? So when I see, okay, I've got a potential entry over here, okay? I'll glance over here, okay? Are we overextended? Are we expecting a magenta peak? The same questions that I used to ask, I still do, Okay. And you can see this morning, the one thing that should stand out at everybody is you had a 180-minute magenta peak on the NASDAQ. Okay. And that would cause price to pull down to this ATR, right? Well, you had an entry here, potentially here, and again here. Do you see that, Richard? But that's overwhelming to some people, okay? Because you're trying to keep up with all these charts and you're saying, oh yeah, I got an entry. And there's no entry there, but you have made the entry up because you want to be in the market. So to keep you focused, I've put it all on one chart now. Now, I can't do the RSI on one chart and I can't do the ADX, but it's much easier to look over here and say, oh yeah, there's a magenta peak. That's going to be a good entry. Okay? That's all I'm trying to do with it. If you notice on the NASDAQ, you did retrace to, it's about 3 points, which is 12 ticks. I'm not sure I really want to risk 12 ticks, especially with trend divergence on that 45-minute. It could continue down, but it's already tested the ATR. And I'm not liking the trend divergence that is on the 45-minute chart. You are making lower lows and you are making higher lows in the stochastics. It's usually not a good setup. Now, could it push it down because you're overextended here? Sure. Could it be a major sell-off today because we have Fed announcement tomorrow? Sure. Okay, but I don't trade things like that. You know, I want this to usually get within about 5 ticks. Okay, this would turn the price bar white or gray in NinjaTrader. Do you see how it did it over here? Okay, that's what I want to see. I don't see that over here. I saw it over here, but I don't see it over here. That tells me I'm not close enough to take a trade. I do have forex open on the other workspace, but there's nothing there right now because it all starts with price at an ATR, and there was nothing at an ATR. If there's nothing at an ATR, I don't have a trade. While we're waiting on a potential trade to set up, I just wanted to show everyone with NinjaTrader. Do you see how I have the colors on the 12-minute market analyzer? But on the 3-minute, I actually have the ADX value. You can change that whenever you want by simply right-clicking on your market analyzer, left-clicking on columns, and then down under configured, if you highlight the ADX value, you can set it to A plot, which is plotting the numerical value of the ADX, or I like to plot the ADX state, which gives me the color. That way, when I have a magenta peak, I know what direction it's going. And all I have to do is click OK, and you'll see that it changes to colors now. Unfortunately, NinjaTrader does not give us the ability to plot both a color and a number in the same cell. So either you have to go with the color or you go with the ADX value, whichever one you prefer. And you can actually do that also with the stochastics. I just want to know when it's overbought or oversold. That's the only thing I want to know. You can tell that price is within one tick of the ATR. And you have red above and you have white below. That means that the 12-minute is potentially going into a downtrend, but that is going against the 45-minute chart. A better entry would have been on this bar. Do y'all see that? That's the one we were in the Dow on. And in that case, you're trading the 45-minute in harmony with the 180. If you look over here, do you see how you were at the ATR? That's this white ATR right here. You were at the ATR trading into the 180-minute chart. Now, you can look at both of these, or you can just look at the ATRs and say, oh, the 45 and the 180 are aligned. Even though the 12 minutes not doing anything, the 45 and the 180 are aligned. Does everybody understand that? So now we potentially have the ability to say, oh, I know what time frames I need to trade. Which ones are aligned? Is it the 3 and the 12? Is it the 12 and the 45? Is it the 45 and the 180? It now identifies it by keeping these charts open. Thanks, Richard. Wait a minute, we have the NASDAQ at an ATR. This one is retracing back to this ATR, which would stop us out over here because it's probably going to go up to 64.15. Not one I want to take, especially with the 45 minutes being overextended as well. I would still be looking for this to come back to the ATR before taking an entry on the USD JPY. That's really the only one right now that we have potentially on forex. The diamond shape. Are you talking about this plus sign? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Al. Are you talking about like this? It's where I clicked on the price bar. If I click on the price bar in Ninja, we get circles. If we click on the price bar in multi-charts, we get squares. And then on the trend ATR, you do get dots like you see here telling you there's an entry at the ATR. But the ATR support and resistance only plots the ATRs in the dots. Now, do y'all see how we had a potential entry here? So we were at the ATR. Okay, but did you notice when I looked over here, I knew we were getting a magenta peak in because the line is dark. Even though there's not a pink dot, do you see how that line is dark red? That tells you the value is decreasing, and more than likely, you're going to get a magenta peak over here. That's because I know all of the indicators. But it takes a while to learn all that. It's not overnight. You don't become a doctor overnight, and you're not going to become a trader overnight. But with time and practice, you'll be able to conquer it. Now, price is moving a bit too slow for me, so I'm going to end the webinar. Are there any questions before we end today? Any questions at all? I am here to answer your questions. No problem, Pete. I did record it and I will post it up on the blog later this afternoon. I do have a mentoring session after the webinar, but I'll get it done sometime this afternoon after I finish. Any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, I'm going to end the session. I hope everyone has a wonderful Tuesday afternoon. I will be presenting in the Nadex room tomorrow on spreads. So if you use binary options or spreads, you will want to sign up for that seminar. It's going to be a really good seminar. How many monitors do I use? I have 6 monitors. I have 6 monitors, Pete, but I actually only use 3 for my trading platforms. All right, everyone have a wonderful Tuesday. And